20-year-old Ron Clewer is. Fill us in on yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school? What's your background?
So I am not originally from Rockford. Born and raised the first part of my childhood in South Chicago, and then moved to central Wisconsin, where I finished out elementary school in a small little town called Coloma, and it was Coloma Grade School. We were so small, we had shared classes, so like 5 and 6, 7 and 8. Then I graduated from Westfield High School in 1984, Westfield, Wisconsin. Go Pioneers! And then I wound up moving out to California for a bit and moved here in the late 80s.
So you grew up not far from the Wisconsin Dells.
I grew up not far from the Wisconsin Dells, so it's less than an hour.
Yeah.
So are you I have to ask, are you conflicted as to whether you're a Bear fan or a Packer fan?
I'm not conflicted at all.
And what
I
are
haven't
you?
either.
Aw. A Cowboy fan, please.
Actually, I am more a soccer fan than I am an American.
Okay, all right, that's cool.
Okay.
That is cool. I like soccer. My kids all played soccer in high school and in college, and I did my share of running along the sidelines with the yellow, with the flag thing. Sideline judge is what I was. So.
Those fun sideline markers. Yeah, get your own workout.
Yeah.
So Gorman and Company, for those who don't know what Gorman and Company is all about, this is not new. Gorman and Company's been around for a while.
We actually that's where I was last night. We were celebrating our 40th anniversary. So started in 1984, the year I graduated high school.
Okay. And how did you find yourself involved with them? What was your career arc to get there?
Sure. So years back, I served as the CEO of the Rockford Housing Authority. But just prior to that role, I was hired at RHA to be the director of real estate development. And at that time, the Housing Authority had done no real estate development in 30 plus years. And we had, an aging portfolio that really wasn't in a place where folks should either A, live in it and have a healthy place to live, or B, contribute positively to the neighborhood. So I was brought in to redevelop that portfolio. We wound up doing a national RFP for a real estate developer, and Gorman happened to be one of multiple respondents. And after a lot of review, we went up to Wisconsin. We looked at their assets, and they had done amazing work to either build or redevelop former public housing or just straight affordable housing. And so we chose Gorman as our partner. And I worked with Gorman from 2010 to 2017 when I left the Housing Authority. I took 2 years off and went to an organization called the Alliance for Strong Families and Communities, which was headquartered in Washington, D.C. And I worked in the D.C. office and the Milwaukee office, where we had our second office, which was our operations center. And then was there for 2 years and came back into housing. I had to get back into housing because it runs through my blood. And I joined the Gorman team at that time in 2019.
Okay. So you were 2019. That was prior or just when Embassy Suite Project? That was after they had already started.
To a close. So actually, because of the work Gorman did here on a couple housing developments and the work they had done in Milwaukee and Kenosha on 2 hotels there. There are some communities Gorman chooses to make deeper investments in, and Rockford was one of them. And then Mayor Larry Morrissey asked, our interest, and this was a result really of a national search again by a group called the Friends of Ziak. And so they did an RFP for a developer. Again, multiple respondents. We have this niche in historic adaptive reuse, and it wound up that Gorman was chosen for that. And we had built the Embassy Suites, or renovated, what was the former Amrock building, into the Embassy Suites, and it's just been an amazing project. So when I was at RHA, we actually did a call for artists on behalf of Gorman to see how we may engage local artists in the renovation of the building. And if you go into, you'll see Jeremy from Mainframe has the amazing wood, repurposed wood art installation behind the reception desk, which is actually a map of our downtown. If you go up on the roof, you'll see the fire pits are done by a local artist named Tim Hawley, and then there's some other local artists as well who've contributed their work, or we purchased their work for the hotel. So I was involved that way, but I came in 2019 at the tail end of the Embassy Suites project, which is really a 12-year project from start to finish. By the time we were done, we were opening just in time for the COVID shutdown.
Yeah, right.
So our grand opening was supposed to be April 1st, and on March 17th, they shut down hotels, and you couldn't stay in a hotel.
And in spite of that happening, I think it's pretty fair to say, and I'm not just blowing smoke because you're on this podcast with us, I think it's pretty safe to say the Embassy Suites project has been way over anyone's expectations. It's just been a huge success.
Yeah, I was reminded last night as we were celebrating our 40th and spending time with my colleagues that 2 years ago, for the first time, Embassy hit the leading Embassy Suites in the entire nation.
Oh, wow.
We've been in multiple award categories, and we've even been on the international list. So yes, it is an amazing place. I'm biased, of course, but you can't tell me somebody would go up and sit on that rooftop and look out over our city and believe that it's a much different place, and we are an incredible place to live.
Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ron.
Well, that's a great story. There were naysayers when the whole project first started.
Always.
I was definitely not one of them. How many of those naysayers have come forward and said, wow, we were wrong. Great job. Because it is a great job. That building is unbelievable.
It is incredible, and thank you. So I think that there have been several, but probably the most meaningful, and I want to give a shout out to her because it takes really integrity to come forward and say what this individual said. So former Alderwoman Vanita Hervey, when she was up giving her 3-minute speech about advancing Barbara Coleman, she got up and said, I voted no. I was against. I didn't think it should happen, and I was wrong, and it is incredible. And that's the type of that shows integrity on an individual's part. And I've always had respect for her, even though we've often been on wrong sides of issues, or different sides of issues, I should say. But for somebody to get up in a public forum like that and admit it was incredible. But that's the type of belief that was out there at the time, right? It's not going to work. It's going to fail. Why would we do this? Why would we invest in our downtown? And you look now at the map of additional investments that are triggered when somebody is, either A, crazy enough, which, Gary Gorman was, but also genius enough at the same time to believe in a vision that an old, vacant 13-story industrial building could become an award-winning hotel, and then put their money after it, right, and make it happen. It causes other people to say, well, geez, instead of, they're willing to do an $87.5 million investment, I'll invest $2 million in this property or $12 million in that property. And the amount of West Side investment it has triggered has been incredible.
Yeah.
So
and
cool.
To see that an old building like that become a hotel, and now the situation that we find ourselves in, not just in Rockford, but all across the country, with this lack of inventory, lack of housing. You hear anywhere from estimates of like 1.7 to 13 some million units short of current housing demand. It's pretty. I think the numbers support at least about a 4 to 5 million unit shortfall just in the last like 15 years.
Yeah.
Is renovating buildings like the old Barbara Coleman buildings into some sort of residential type spaces, is that going to make enough of a dent that people might get a little bit excited about it?
I think yes, first of all, but it's also the Barbara Coleman project is going to be an amazing project. It is, however, the only vehicle, the historic tax credit in Rockford, that is making investments possible for housing. And so it is going to make a dent, but it is only one of the few ways we're able to make a dent.
It's a dent. Yeah, it's not the whole thing for sure.
Right. But even, if you look at any of the construction in Rockford over the last, 5 to 10 years, thank God for Justin Fern and Urban Equities, who's got a historic adaptive reuse model, has been able to leverage the River's Edge state tax credits for historic, as well as the federal historic tax credits, because if there wasn't somebody savvy enough to utilize those credits, then there really wouldn't be anything happening in Rockford for home construction. So there have been hundreds of units that have been added to the city's inventory, and they're only through the historic adaptive reuse, because that tool actually makes economic sense. Without it, you're seeing no real new construction, although Justin did do the one building there just on South Main north of the embassy. But that really is an anomaly, and you don't really see those. It was 30 units, not 300 units or 3,000 units, which we're actually locally, arguably 5,000 plus units behind in inventory, and it all depends on what stratus of household you're looking at, whether it's low income households or high income households, which most wouldn't recognize. But we have a significant shortfall of housing for those individuals who are able and willing to spend $400,000 or more on a house. We don't have the inventory there either.
No. The looks on people's faces when I tell them we could build 1,000 houses today and they'd all be sold and moved into in a month,
Yep.
Because we have that kind of demand. And they're like, here in Rockford? Yeah, here in Rockford, all across the country too. But mid-sized cities like Rockford across the country sometimes get overlooked in a lot of this stuff. But my goodness, when you take a look at cost of living and all the other aspects that have come into where people are comfortable living and what they want, we've got it here in Rockford. We just need to shine a light on a little bit better.
You got to flaunt it a little more.
Yeah. And I think repurposing old buildings. I know Gary Anderson, I heard him give a talk about a lot of these old buildings and his great frustration, how many of them have already been torn down that could have been repurposed into useful, maybe even residential buildings. Let's not let any more of them go. And he named a whole bunch of different buildings around the city that he would love to see repurposed. He said, all right, we've got Embassy Suites now. We can see that this is viable. This works. The project now on the river there, the whole Barbara Coleman project, how long are you thinking this is going to take before there's actually people doing commerce and living in that space?
I think we've heard in the media they've started phase one, right, and moving forward. Construction on phase one, my understanding is likely a 24-month window, and so that could could be 2 years from now. We'll see people living in there.
Wow.
But one of the challenges, regardless of all the stuff going on in the media, is we just don't have a workforce either to build it, right? And so that's the other piece. We have a housing shortage and we have a labor shortage, and so trying to find an appropriate workforce that's going to be able to complete that on time, I know, is a challenge for every developer. We have a project coming up, and you really have to beat the streets, so to speak, to get people signed up and contracted to do the work, not because they don't want to, but because there's so much work elsewhere and in our region for just a small amount of workforce, and so we also need to increase that workforce.
Is there, are you hearing anything? This might be a question for someone completely different. I don't know, but I'm thinking internships and apprenticeships for electrical and plumbing and construction and all that sort of stuff. Where, hey, you wanna get out of high school and get schooling while being paid, there's got to be opportunities out there, and we need to start shining a light on those places, those opportunities too.
Oh, absolutely. I think RPS actually, is part of their career, college and career academies, has done a great deal more over the last several years in the trade space, right? For a long time, there was this push that everybody had to go off to college and become a doctor, a lawyer, or, a scientist of some sort or something, not recognizing the great living that a tradesman can make as an electrician or a carpenter or whatever. And it's really what our community was founded on, is these types of amazing careers. And so it was good to see RPS go back in that direction. Rock Valley, I know, has a relationship with RPS around this. Habitat for Humanity uses high school students to build homes. And so, yes, that's there. Youth Build is out there doing work as well, but we need to put those all on steroids.
Yeah.
And get a lot more people in the workforce.
Good news. It's happening at Harlem High School. They're building on there, and they're going to be building the frames for houses that Habitat for Humanity will be building.
Yep.
And that'll be very exciting. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to shine a spotlight on today? We could go on all kinds. I told Tom earlier, I need to have you and I on and maybe a couple other folks to just have like an hour and a half, just open forum on real estate related issues around Rockford sometime. It would be a very informative, I think, for people to plug into that and see what opportunities are currently there and what opportunities should be there that we should be, trying to find solutions for. But for the purpose of this today, is there anything we didn't ask you about that you'd like to let us know before we let you go?
I really think we need to have this broader conversation about real estate. And I'd love to do that. When we talk about affordability as an example, locally, decision makers and people in positions of power who could help us create inventory legitimately fear when somebody says the words affordable housing. And I've been in enough of these conversations and circles that we hear people say, we don't want that. And what they're
affordable, and they think disposable, and that's not
right. Exactly.
It's
like, no, we need to have high quality housing that's healthy for people to live in. It needs to be affordable to folks across all different income spectrums. And so it often gets lost in this discussion of describe what is affordable. We don't have a way to do that. Actually, we do. It just means that you're not going to spend more than 30% of your income on household expenses, whether you're a homeowner or an apartment renter. And because of this lack of inventory and the increase in housing prices and even rent prices, one can look at that as a homeowner and say, this is a rock star market, right? My home is worth so much more than I paid for it, but sell it and try to buy another one. And it's a challenge because there's no inventory. But on the other side, what we're seeing is more than half of our city is what's called housing burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their income, and significant folks are spending more than 50%. And so that becomes a challenge as well. And so creating inventory is important to bringing that amount of the number of folks who are housing burdened down, both on the for sale and the for rent side, because that's what's going to make our stable neighborhoods. So I would love to talk about that and what we might do. We've got to change our model here. Land use restrictions are keeping us from creating inventory. And we've got 7,000 to 10,000 jobs coming to the Rockford area in the next 5 years. If we don't have places for these folks to live, they're going to live somewhere else, and we're going to miss out on an opportunity to grow our community.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was, the National Zoning Atlas. Were you the one that turned me onto that?
Yeah, we were talking about it. Yep.
That the National Zoning Atlas is one of these hopeful partial solutions to our situation. And I don't know if they've gotten how much they've done in the Midwest yet, but this effort to let people know, hey, here's the zoning issues that your community is dealing with and why builders are choosing not to build in your area. What are we going to do about it? And there's the question, Ron, what are we going to do about it?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, so Midwest Chicago's actually done some amazing work around allowing accessory dwelling units, allowing duplexes to be built on single family lots. Even, there are communities that are going with up to 6 families on a single family lot. And part of that goes back to those land use regulations, right? Where even here in our city in 2007, 2008, we adopted a new zoning ordinance that increased the minimum lot sizes. So you really can put a 4 to 6 family on a single family lot that is, from the newer regulations, if you will. But try to do that in a single family neighborhood, and I think neighbors are going to go up in arms. But I live in Edgewater, and I've got neighbors down the block living in 4 families and 6 families, and they've lived together this way for decades, and it works. But we've become so fixated on single family that's the means. And so with our zoning regulations, we've increased the costs of building single family alone. And so being able to get some low density multifamily would be, I think, important. Changing our regulations to allow that, changing our regulations that take away those minimum lot sizes, which are really excessive, and allow us to get back to, again, Edgewater, all these historic neighborhoods west of the river and south of the city are built on small lots and small homes. Even on the east side, you look at the area around Edgebrook; those are small lots, small homes, and they were built that way for a reason, because there needed to be starter homes. Mm-hmm. So we don't really build starter homes anymore. We just build the big ones, right? And those aren't the inventory we need in bulk or in mass.
Right. Yeah, the starter home new construction market is non-existent, if not like 1%, maybe.
Right.
It's crazy low.
Well, in most cases, it's illegal to build them under our current zoning code.
And something's got to change. I know. I think we have some advocates, at least in local government, that are seeing the need for that now and realizing that things have to be done. So, not to say who to vote for, but voting matters.
It absolutely does.
Ask people who are running for office what they think about the housing situation and the lack of inventory and zoning laws, because some people running for office might be thinking about it, but they might not be thinking about it. So bring it up. Let them know that it's on your mind. I know it's on mine. I don't know what the solution is, other than to maybe tweak some of these zoning laws. And who was it this week was telling me that, or you were telling me when we were chatting earlier this week, it used to be about $17,000 right up front for a builder requirements to build a new house. Now it's up to like 28,000 just on these required things that the builder can't get around.
Yeah, when I was with William Charles years back, and the city was looking at updating its zoning ordinance, and at the time I understood why. Like, we were building a lot of really cheap and not attractive looking housing, and it wasn't what we needed to do, right? And so affordable, as you said, isn't disposable, and so there was concerns about that. So there's a big shift, though, that increased minimum lot sizes, that increased, the facade limitations for brick and windows and all these other things. And back at that time, we did an analysis and sent a memo off to the city, which I have on my Substack posts. But it showed the math that you're creating an extra expense of $17,000 per household, a single family house, just to accommodate these new land use regulations. And we did the math again here about 2 months ago. It's $28,000 in today's numbers, and I think that's why we are not seeing homes being built in Rockford. If you look at the permit trends, Habitat is our biggest developer in the city of Rockford.
Do you have a link somewhere to your Substack that I can copy and paste?
It's just substack.com and Ron Clewer, but I'm happy to send it to you, Greg. I actually was working on my article this morning for today. I get conflicted on what way do I want to go sometimes, because there's so many stories to write.
Right.
Actually, I'm focused. I'm going to stay focused on the connection between health and housing. And while I'll continue to beat the drum about the need for inventory and how do we improve our land use regulations, not doing that. When you look in the city of Rockford, in the last article I posted, which actually was just about 2.5 weeks ago, the connection between poor quality housing. So this is old housing that's becoming blighted and not really being renovated, and illness. So things like asthma and even mental health are tracked back to the quality of the house an individual lives in. And so, there are so many variables in a home that can either help you live a healthy life or unfortunately contribute to high medical costs and create more problems. And we were in a meeting, a group of us, last week, and this is an initiative that's going to be coming out here in the next several months. So I'll refrain from saying what it is yet because it's another organization. I don't want to burst their bubble. But we were looking at this map that they created, a heat map, and the heat map was identifying those neighborhoods in the city of Rockford that are neighborhoods of success, right? Which most of them are on the northeast side. And they say most because not, there are also neighborhoods of challenge on the northeast side. And so it was neighborhoods of success, neighborhood of challenge, and neighborhoods of significant challenges. And so, significant challenges and challenges were identified as purple and teal green, respectively. When you looked at the map of the city and you saw 70+% of our neighborhoods fell into those two categories, that's a challenge. And how do we continue to keep our neighborhoods vibrant and great places to live and work and have fun? It all goes around the value of housing, right? And so not only do we need to improve inventory, but we need to improve the quality of the inventory we have. So the county health rankings and roadmaps released this week, 2024 health numbers and rankings for counties. And when you look at Winnebago County, last year we were in the upper 90s for health outcomes out of 102 counties. And so, we would rather be towards the number one for health outcomes, but we're at the bottom. And when you look at the contributing factors, a lot of it is the quality of our housing in many of our neighborhoods. So that's what I'm going to write about this week and the connection to the rankings.
And some of that can be, it sounds so immense and it sounds like such a huge challenge. And some of this stuff could be solved is simply, and this, I'm using the word simply, but track me here. We're simply solving some of these food desert areas where we need a good grocery store near that neighborhood. Or, there are a dozen houses that, they're beyond repair. They just need to be leveled and restarted, build anew. And having that done in a few different neighborhoods here and there could be the spark that rejuvenates the neighborhood.
Absolutely. And I think, that what you just mentioned, the access to food and then the access to healthcare and the access to quality education all falls under this umbrella of the social determinants of health, which, I wish they were called the social determinants of life, because then housing folks and economic development folks would pay attention to them. But those are the things that create the conditions for which people can live successful lives. And so the housing is the foundational piece to it. But if it's in a neighborhood that lacks all of those other things, it's far more difficult for that family to be successful.
Yeah, I think we're pretty blessed and lucky here in Rockford that the healthcare part of it is pretty much taken care of for the most part. So that's the good news. But yeah, we've got some food deserts out there and we got some blighted neighborhoods. Let's talk further about maybe setting up a special podcast edition, maybe some weekday when we can get some of our other local real estate related compadres on a podcast and spend an hour or two just going over this stuff. Ron, appreciate your time. We're going to let you go and enjoy writing your article.
I will. You guys have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Here's Ron Clewer. He's the Illinois market president at Gorman and Company, LLC. Welcome to our podcast today, which we are calling How Down Payment Assistance Can Help You Buy a Home. My name is Greg Saunders, and over there now on the other side of the screen is Jess Rielly from ENVOY Mortgage. How you doing, Jess?
Hey, Greg, I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a beautiful day in Northern Illinois, and
Happy Monday.
Time to talk today.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, as we get started, we want people to know they are welcome to share in the comments their questions, and we'd love to hear where you are listening and watching from today, even if it's not in Illinois. Let us know where you are at, where you're from, and the number one thing, if you have any questions for us today, and if we don't get to those questions during our live portion of recording this, we'll try our best to get to them afterwards as well. But we really pride ourselves on being able to help our clients get the best outcomes possible. And sometimes that's fairly simple and easy to do, and a lot of times it's very difficult to do. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff here today on this podcast. So feel free to put in the comments where you are listening and watching from, and we're going to hang out here as we do this, record this live. Not everyone likes to do this, Jess. So I applaud you for doing this with me in this format.
Oh, yeah. Hey, anytime I get to talk to you, Greg, I'm happy.
Appreciate that.
This doesn't scare me. I think it's fun, and hopefully we get some interactions too. If we get questions going and stuff, I think it would just make it awesome and valuable.
Well, we do have some folks also. I did get the Instagram feed to work, so we got some Instagram folks that can watch as well. And if you put your comments, questions there, I'll try my best to see them. Those won't pop up on my screen like other ones will. So
you got a lot to look at. You're like checking screens.
There's a lot. I feel like a TV producer. I was only in TV for about 7 or 8 months. I never had to do anything like this. I worked at a local TV station making graphics and running cameras for news.
Yeah.
In the studio. I was not a out of studio person. I was an in studio person. So
yeah.
But nothing like this. This is all wild.
I got the easy job. I just gotta look at you and you tell me what you're seeing and what questions are coming up. And
well, let's start with the most difficult question of all, Jessica Rielly. Who are you? Where'd you grow up, and how'd you find yourself in the mortgage lending business?
Yeah. So, okay, boy, let me start with, I went to NIU and I got a degree in business. I have been in the Rockford area my entire life. I never really left. So I grew up here. Even when I went to NIU, I commuted. I was working while going to college, and graduated in 2010, which didn't used to be.
What did you go to? Let's not miss the high school.
What'd you say?
Which high school did you go to?
I went to Harlem.
Harlem. Okay, you're a Harlem Husky. All
Harlem
right.
Husky. Harlem Husky, NIU Husky. I've just been a Husky my whole life. So then was commuting when I went to NIU a little bit. Actually, I finished up at the NIU Rockford campus, which was fun because our class sizes were really small. So if you don't know about NIU Rockford, or if you haven't explored that as a college option, it was awesome. So that allowed me to work. I started working at a bank at that time, which is how I eventually ended up in mortgage lending in 2010. And then I have just, I've been in lending ever since, been in mortgages that entire time. So I kind of found myself really enjoying where I was working, and they were like, hey, we'll hire you after you graduate. And in 2010, like, if you had a job, that was a great thing. So it was right after
the economy collapsed in 2008. For those who might be too young to remember that, the economy was building up to a point where in 2008, a whole bunch of stuff hit the fan. A lot of stuff that shouldn't have been happening that was happening.
Yep.
We don't need to get into all the details of that, but the cause of that crash, those factors really don't exist today.
Correct. Yeah, it really changed the whole atmosphere of lending, and a lot of things changed, but specifically kind of in the lending arena. So when I started in 2010, it was a really interesting time to get into mortgage lending. A lot of people were exiting the business and telling me don't do this, and it's a really hard job, and guidelines definitely tightened up and things like that. But I feel like I was coming at a good time because I didn't know how it was prior to, 2008, like in 2005 and 2006 and 2007. So I feel lucky in that regard. And yeah, I've been in lending ever since. I've got a background working for a local bank, working for a credit union, and now working for ENVOY. ENVOY is really just a bank, a retail mortgage bank, but we only do mortgages. So it's really what we specialize in, and have some of the, different products and programs, some of which we'll talk about today.
Okay. So that I think is an important distinction to let people know is ENVOY is a bank, although they don't do checking accounts or savings accounts.
Correct. No credit cards or car loans or anything like that. We only focus on mortgages and HELOCs now too.
Okay. So that's an important distinction between other types of mortgage companies that might be out there that don't have the banking products that you might be able to offer to everyday folks who are looking to get a mortgage and buy a house.
Correct. Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So, and we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. My background, I spent 20 years in broadcasting. Never, ever thought I'd get into real estate. This was not my path choice. This was not my plan A at all. I thought I'd do radio for my entire career. I loved being in radio, which is probably why I still love doing the podcast and doing stuff like this. But I grew up in southeastern Wisconsin, little town called Wind Lake. I went to Muskego High School. I did do some college up at UW Stout in the Wisconsin system up there, but decided to drop out when my grants and my funding was going to end, and I was going to have to start taking out loans. And I looked at what school, and this was back in 1989. Okay, so even in 1989, I was looking at it going, okay, do I really want to take on this much debt and have this career path? And I didn't think I did. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a year off. I did a full year and a summer session and was doing very well in school, but I just didn't like the loans idea to go forward. So I took a sales job with a company called National Motor Club. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but we did third-party marketing. I traveled all over the state of Wisconsin visiting farmers union members, and they were offering a motor club membership as a benefit to their Wisconsin farmers union memberships. And mind you, I grew up in a house where my dad was a machinist. He grew up on a farm as a kid, but I didn't grow up on a farm. He moved to the Milwaukee area to take a job with my uncle. His brother, one of his older brothers, got him a job at a place called P&H Harnishvager. They made cranes. So they helped, anything that got built and needed a crane. They were one of the companies that made the huge cranes that got things built. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until basically my sister and I were both teenagers. Then she became a para, was a teacher's assistant. So I bring that all up just to say I didn't come from money. We were not wealthy folks by any stretch. That lived in a very modest neighborhood and didn't complete college. So some people might frown on that, but that's the truth. After my stint of being in sales for the National Motor Club for a little over a year, I got an opportunity to start work here in Rockford. I was living in Broadhead, Wisconsin, which isn't that too awful far away. But I started working here in Rockford at a place called Big Sur Waterbeds, selling waterbeds. Remember when those were popular?
I do. I had a waterbed. Yeah, they were like not just popular; they were like really cool. That was what you wanted.
That's what you wanted, yeah.
Yeah.
The low wavy ones. Did you want the extra special heaters, all that stuff? Yeah, we sold all that stuff. Right across the street from Lino's is where the store was.
Oh yeah, how funny!
Yeah, right over there. So I was there for how long was I with Big Sur Waterbeds? I was working there for a few months, and I was working part-time in radio. And I loved radio. And when the opportunity to go full-time radio came up, I jumped at it. So basically was in broadcasting for 20 years. And when that came to an end, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Now what?
And Tony Vanderhayden was an acquaintance, not really a friend yet, but acquaintance. We've known of each other for quite a while. And we were in a position, my wife and I, where we just didn't know if we could afford to keep our house anymore. When the crash happened in 2008, I had been with a radio company for a couple of years, and we did okay until about 2012. 2012, between 2012 and 2013, when I was no longer in full-time broadcasting and was kind of doing a lot of freelance stuff. I was DJing a lot of weddings at my DJ company, Big Day DJ, was helping to keep us afloat.
Yeah.
But it wasn't great either. So Tony comes out to our house in the fall of 2012. And when I'm like, I don't know if I can afford my mortgage anymore. I'm struggling.
So you were meeting with Tony to possibly sell or
Sell the
see
house.
what option. Interesting. Okay.
Sell the house. So Tony sits down with us and says to my wife and I, you know what? Looking at your numbers, looking at the value of your home and everything that you're currently where you're at right now, your financial picture, I don't think you should sell your house. I think you should keep fighting, keep going forward, see what else comes up for you. But I don't think it's a good time for you to sell your house yet. This is a realtor where I'm talking to, okay? And I think it's important to bring that up to speak to Tony's character, because if any other realtor had come to our house, more than likely to have said, "Yep, the sign here. We'll put a sign in your yard in next week." Not Tony. She looked at our overall situation and said, "You know what? I don't think this is the best course of action for you. Keep fighting. See what else. See where you land." So fast forward to 2013. And the spring of 2013. So this is 11 years ago, almost to the month right now where we are. We have her come back out again. And I'm like, I haven't improved much, Tony. I don't think we can afford our house. And she goes, well, you know what, Greg, your personality is very similar to my buyer specialist, Laura's personality. I think you'd work really well with buyers. Would you consider getting into real estate? And I'm like, I had never considered it. But if you say I can shadow Laura for a couple days and see what she does, I got nothing to lose.
Yeah. What were you doing at that time? Were you mostly just doing like your DJing and stuff?
I was DJing weddings. Yeah. I was substitute teaching.
So all different, anything.
Yeah. So this would have been in June of 2013.
Okay.
So nearly 11 years, very close to. Spent a couple of days with Laura, and I was like, I could do this. This looks good, fulfilling. She loves what she does, helping people buy homes, and a lot of times it's their first home.
Yeah.
This is a fulfilling career to try. So I dropped everything. I enrolled in the classes at the real estate office here in Rockford, and I became Tony's assistant. So from July to September of 2013, I was Tony's assistant, weekdays, taking classes when they were available, and I got my license in September and closed my first house in November 1st of 2013.
That's my birthday.
There you go.
November 1st. We'll celebrate.
So from November of 2013 till today, I've closed probably 420 something houses, and it's been a great career. I've really loved doing it.
Yeah.
Part of the positive of doing this job is meeting folks like you and partnering with you on things and finding out that, some folks, they want to buy a house and they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they call folks like Tony. I'm going to throw this up on the screen. So they call a place like Sold on Tony. They're like, hey, Tony's team, I want to buy a house. What should I do? And one of the first things we tell them to do, get pre-approved, get a loan. One of those places you can call is ENVOY Mortgage. And Jessica Rielly, here's her contact information. We usually give a few other recommendations as well, so people can kind of shop around, because it's a good idea to take a look and see what personalities you mesh with and what options and what programs and products are available to you. Because mortgages are not one size fit all.
No, and that's what I tell clients this a lot. Like most of my good friends are, from real estate, and a lot of them are lenders, and everybody has different products and programs and options. And so what might not work at one place might work somewhere else. And there's a lot of really great local lenders. And so we're very blessed in this area in that regard. And I would just encourage people to stay local where, you're not just a number. We, know your name. We know your family. We'll be there at closing. I was at a closing this morning, and first time home buyer and her mom. It's just always fun. Just keep it local for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. What is a home loan? What's a mortgage? And when people hear things like FHA, VA, USDA,
So many acronyms.
loan,
Yeah.
what is a mortgage, and what's the best fit for most people, I guess? Or
Yeah. So in simple terms, a mortgage is essentially a loan that is utilized to purchase a property, to purchase real estate. So I guess the place to start is just with contacting a local lender once you make that decision that you want to buy a house. And even before then, it's a good idea to take some action and take some steps towards improving your situation. So that might be different for everybody, but that might mean, working to save up some money, which we're going to kind of get into some grant options and things like that later. But, saving, never a bad idea anyways. Even if you don't need the money for closing, have some money set aside in case of an emergency. Credit is looked at. So obviously it's important to, pay your bills on time, make sure you're not having late payments, manage things like your credit cards responsibly. And then obviously you want to have a secure, job. You want to be employed and have a history of that employment and that income. So once you feel like you're in a good position, or even if you're not, you're just like, I don't really know what I need to do, I don't know where to start. Contacting a local lender is definitely the first step. So then we can kind of wrap our arms around your financial situation.
And I think that's one of the important things to stress to folks is just because you might feel like you're not ready doesn't mean you shouldn't meet with folks like us to kind of help you figure that out.
Yeah.
And look what Tony did for me. She was willing to say, and I am too, because I tell you, I way more like a consultant, a salesperson. I'm not a salesy person at all. I like to consult people. Hey, guess what? You're not ready to buy a house yet, but here's what you can do to get ready. Or surprise, you are ready now, and we can start looking if this is the price range you want us to look at.
Well, have that time, right? Because, if you want to buy today, but you're not quite there, you need to have a couple of things happen before that. I don't think you can meet with either of us too early. Like, I don't think that that's a thing, because we can always give you advice and help you out, tell you to pay down something, tell you to, save X amount of dollars or whatever that looks like for that specific client. It helps to have some time. Nobody likes to be rushed or, jump into something that maybe you shouldn't have jumped into just because, you didn't have time or your landlord was selling your property or whatever. It's good to allow yourself that time to plan.
Yeah. It's a little different situation. I actually have a form when I meet with people at the office. One of the forms that I pull out that thankfully I normally set aside without signing, but every so often I got to ask people to sign it. I call it my permission slip to act like a crazy person. Because
tell me about that.
Because you just told me today is, what is today? April 22nd as we record this today. It's the end of April. You just told me your lease is up at the end of July. So you don't want to renew your lease. You just told me that. You don't want to renew your lease. Your rent's going up, and you would like to be in a house by July 31st. So we need to get on the ball. We need to get going now. And so you're going to sign this form telling me you want to be my priority A client. You want me to act like a crazy person, finding you a house now, because guess what? We might find you a house in 2 weeks and you might love it. And 5 or 10 other people might also love that house. You might not win that first offer you write.
Yeah.
And the second house might happen the same way. It might be the third or fourth or fifth time that we write an offer before we find the house that you actually get under contract. And how long is that going to take? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that.
Right.
So we're going to find you a house.
The approval process doesn't typically happen overnight. It could definitely, but if you have a unique situation, or if we have to verify your employment, meaning we have to actually get information from your employer, prior to issuing a good, solid, strong pre-approval letter, that can take time. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that home buyers today are making are thinking that process happens, immediately, and holding off on getting pre-approved or talking to a lender until they find the house that they want. And unfortunately, by that time, it's too late, because, obviously we have a lot of buyers right now in the market, and inventory is low, so not a ton of homes available. And when a house comes on the market, if it's priced right and it's, in the area that the borrower's looking in or whatever, there's a very real chance that it could already have offers on it. And if that's when someone decides to apply, and get their paperwork together, it might already be sold by the time that, that letter is actually in place. So I would say in today's market, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people are making, is waiting until they find the property to talk to a lender.
Not afraid to say it happens quite oftenly that a new client that we start looking at homes with, most of the time has to lose out at least on one offer before they start to actually take my professional consultation advice on what to do with that offer. Because I think and I get it, I'm that way too. I interact with salespeople and I feel sold on things sometimes, and I'd rather not feel sold on things. I want to feel like I made a decision that benefited me more than my salesperson that help me make that decision. I mean, that's what we like to do. So when I'm telling people that have just told me how much they love this house, okay, so let's pretend that we're playing poker. Okay, you're sitting at a table with 5 other people who also want to win this pot known as the house that you're about to buy or try to buy. So you're telling me right now that you love this house, you really want it, so let's go all in.
Yeah.
What does all in look like for you? So that's specific to the client. I can't tell you what all in looks like. You have to tell me as the client, hey, I'm willing to spend, over asking price for this house. And what else are you willing to do? Do you have extra cash? Are you willing to cover an appraisal gap if the appraisal comes in lower than the sales price we agreed to? There's other strategies involved with trying to win a deal these days. That would be one of them. But what does all in look like for you, and how can we best put your best foot forward? Because here's the other confusing thing that most people don't get about people like you and I in this situation. Finding the house isn't really the difficult part. We'll find the house. It's going to be found. The difficult part now in this market is we have to sell your offer to the listing agent and their client to win a deal with them, because they've got multiple people to choose from, multiple offers.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
So how can I help make you look like the winning deal? And having a pre-approval with Jess at ENVOY Mortgage is one of the big steps, one of the big rocks in the box.
I feel like you're giving me too much credit, but thank you for saying that.
It's one of the most important things, because unless you're a cash buyer, you've got to have a strong lender that that the seller's going to like and want to work with.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important. I think pre-approval letters, just in general, maybe the last, 12 months or so, have been really analyzed stronger than they ever have in the past, because you're right. I mean, a seller might have multiple to choose from. So they want to not only look, what are you willing to pay? for this property, but who's your lender? Do I know them? Do they have a history of closing deals, or do they have a history of, things falling apart later on? And, can we reach them? If we need something from them, are they going to communicate with us? Are they available at night or on the weekends when a lot of banks are closed? I mean, all of that stuff is looked at. What type of financing, a buyer has, that's considered by a seller.
Right. It really is. It's all part of the mix, and they've got decisions to make. It's the price might be the most important thing on the contract offer, but it's not the only piece.
Right.
There's a lot of different pieces, and the price might be 20 to 25% of the overall picture of the importance of what's going into the offer. So
sure,
it's more than just price. Well, some of the questions that we've heard about lending and mortgage loans these days, we just kind of defined what a mortgage is. How are current interest rates affecting affordability?
Yeah.
Interest rates have been a topic of conversation with a lot of our clients because just a couple years ago they were historically low.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're back to normal, and people feel like they're high, even though they're really high. So
yeah. I mean, I get it, right? Like, I mean, we're gonna always compare today's rates to where rates were just a few years ago. I think that that's normal human nature. So, especially for younger clients who don't know any different, all they know is the past, we'll say 5 years or so, but we've had a really, really long streak, not just during COVID, but even prior to COVID, of sort of abnormally low interest rates. And I'll say that, like, when I started in 2010, rates were between 4 and 5. And during that time, there was a huge refinance boom. For my first couple of years in lending, I just did refinances. I was just doing refinances over and over. And I learned a lot, but not a lot of purchases happening at that time, because I remember I bought my first house actually in 2010. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, I'm so smart. Like, look at how smart I am. Like, locking in, 4.25%. Because interest rates have never been this low. They're never going to go lower than 4.25%. And I refinanced that loan, and once they dropped below that. So even going back further, again, going back to 2010, which is when I started in the business, they've sort of been abnormally low. And then during, the COVID years, I'll call them 2020 and 2021, early part of 2022, they were just, at levels that I don't know that we'll ever see again. So, kind of reminding clients that this is more normal. Between 7 and 8% is where they're at right now on a 30-year. And that is historically more normal for a mortgage. That being said, though, I would never sit here and be like, well, they're not that low, and this is typical, because it does affect affordability. Meaning, obviously, your payment is going to be higher at a 7% than it would have at a 5%, right? So, one of the benefits, I think, of starting early and getting pre-approved is so you can determine your price range. And a lot of people that are applying now, aren't really sure. And that is fine. That's common. Every time I call it like an initial consult with a new buyer, just so we can hear a little bit more about their goals and, what they're looking to do. Do they have a house currently? Do they need to sell that house? Is this their first house? We do that initial consult. And a lot of times clients are like, I don't really know, what I can buy. I don't know, what price point I should be looking in. So a lot of times we end up working backwards from where they want to keep their payment. Mm-hmm. So for example, if a client says, well, I want to buy a house at $350 and put minimum down, but I want my payment to be $1,800, it's not going to work. It doesn't line up, right? So we're kind of restructuring things maybe now more than ever, based on not only interest rates, but property taxes, homeowners insurance, which is not getting any cheaper, and just being realistic with people of, okay, if you want to keep your payment at $1,800 a month, here's what you would need to do, assuming you put this much down. So we run a lot more numbers than I ever have up front to make sure that people aren't shopping in the wrong price range.
Right.
Because nobody wants to get under contract and then find out, their payment is too high and they're not actually comfortable with that. Even if a buyer qualifies there too, I'm very conscious of like, okay, here's what you qualify for, but are you comfortable with this? Because we're not always considering all of your expenses either. I have a lot of friends that their biggest expense right now is daycare, right? Mm-hmm. Daycare expenses can be a mortgage for some people. So your expenses better than I do. And so I always ask people, is this comfortable for you? And if not, then maybe we need to, bring down or adjust the price point.
And that's the important thing to remember, I think, is it's not, the rate is less important than the actual monthly payment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that being a homeowner is a big benefit to a lot of people is you can lock in a rate for 30 years and you don't have to worry about your rent going up every year because you've locked in a rate. And the only thing that's going to change is your property taxes and your insurance payments, possibly.
Yeah.
And that can fluctuate, but not as much as most rent adjustments fluctuate.
Well, and let's be honest, I'm a landlord too. I have 5 rental properties, 6 doors. And I only say that because when taxes and insurance go up, your rent goes up too, right? Like we have to, as landlords have to keep up with that as well. And, those things have not been going down. And that's why I think you've seen a lot of rental increases as well, as to keep up the cost of some of those things.
Yeah. That's important to know. Sticking on the interest rate theme here, do you foresee interest rates rising or falling in the coming months? And do you think it's, is it important to lock in a rate now? Is there a buy down option that some people should consider? What's the act right now? What's
lots to cover. So I think this will be an interesting year for rates. I think in the past, prior to a couple of the more recent reports coming out, like the inflation, the CPI report, I think people really felt strongly that rates were going to come down this year. I had a lot of people that really held that belief and would talk about rates coming down and refinancing at that point. And I don't personally see them coming down significantly in the short term, meaning, probably this year. Mortgage interest rates are very closely tied to inflation. And if inflation is going up or not going down like the Federal Reserve wants it to, interest rates are not going to come down. So when inflation gets to a point where the feds believe, okay, things are getting better, things are getting more under control, only at that point do I see interest rates coming down. So I only say that because I would encourage people to kind of consider that. I think I talked to a client actually this week that last year when interest rates started to go up and they were, 6%, they held off. They're like, oh, we're going to wait. Interest rates are going up. We're going to hold off. And, now they're looking at 7 and they're like, gosh, I wish we wouldn't have waited. And that's what I fear for people is, if you are going to wait until interest rates come down, just understand that might not be for some time. And then on the same side of that, when interest rates finally do start to come down, I think we will see a flood of home buyers look to enter the market, right? People who did decide to hold off, which can drive prices up, right? The more competition out there, it's going to bring prices up. So, waiting might not be in your best interest.
No.
Now, that being said, ENVOY specifically has programs to combat the interest rates, not necessarily combat because the rates are where they are, but to allow you to have a lower payment for the first few years of your mortgage in order to keep your payment more affordable in the short term and hopefully get you to a point where you can refinance. Even if you don't, it is a fixed interest rate mortgage. So we have what's called a temporary interest rate buy down that can be seller funded for either 1, 2, or 3 years. And what that means is you need to get a seller credit in order to utilize these programs. And it would keep your interest rate 1, 2, or 3 points lower for those first few years. So this equates to hundreds of dollars monthly that a client can save, that a new homeowner can save by using the temporary buy down program, and typically thousands of dollars throughout the first few years.
And
now,
then the rate will go up on a scheduled time.
Correct. So for example, I'll just use a quick example, the 2-1 interest rate buy down. If the rate that the borrower qualifies for is 7%, right? That's the rate today where the borrower qualifies. A 2-1 buy down would be 2 points lower for the first year. So that client would start out at 5 for year 1. Then it would adjust in year 2 to 6%. And then for year 3 through year 30, it would be fixed at 7%. So this is not adjustable rate mortgage. It is a fixed interest rate product. And I think it's also important to know that we qualify that borrower based on the 7%. So the highest the payment would ever be. So we're not putting anybody in a bad situation. We're having these conversations of, hey, this is your payment year 1, this is your payment year 2, and then it's going to adjust to this at year 3.
And let's just say 3 or 4 years from now, interest rates are wildly different from where they are today. They could be way higher or way lower. And if that's the case, you got a decision you can make. You can refinance if you really want to.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win because if interest rates go up, you're still locked in fixed at 7% or wherever wherever the rates were that you were eligible for today. So if they go up, you're going to be really happy that you have a fixed interest rate loan. And if they go down, you can apply to refinance at any time. So it's kind of a win-win for current homeowners. It's to tackle that affordability aspect. And secondly, Envoy just came out with a new program. It's called a lender funded 1-0 buy down. It's 1 point lower for the first year, no seller credit involved. So both of these programs are great options depending on what you can negotiate into your contract, seller credit or no seller credit.
Okay. And that's, again, one of those strategy things with your offer is that you can talk with your agent and your loan officer about, is this a smart thing to do? Is this going to help me win a deal? Is it going to help me afford this house if I win the deal? These are all very important questions to answer even before you go looking at houses, really.
Right.
You want to get this stuff.
And that's why it's important too to have those partners who are truly on your side. Your lender should be talking to your realtor, and your realtor should be familiar with your lender, and having these conversations, because utilizing like the seller funded buy down, for example, affects what you're going to offer, right? And you're gonna want to write in a seller credit if you can get that for when you write up your contract.
Absolutely. I put in the chat links to our websites, and I want to bring up those real quick so people can see what they find when they click on those links. If you go to the envoymortgage.com/jessica.rielly, this is the page that you're going to find. Jess,
it's got Rielly. My full name, Jessica, right? My government name.
There you go. Licensed in Illinois and Wisconsin. Got a little backstory going on here. The different loan types, loan process, mortgage calculators, frequently asked questions, all that stuff. A bunch of reviews as well, and explanation of the Envoy business so you can understand what Envoy is all about. My website that I'd like to send people to is greg.northernillinoishomesearch.com. So my face might not pop up right away when you bring it up because I'm on Team Sold on Tony. As I explained earlier, I'm a part of a team of agents that has an awesome admin team that helps us take care of a lot of our paperwork. We have listing specialists that work exclusively with sellers, and then myself here working exclusively with buyers. So that's what you'll see if you go to our websites from those links today. Is there anything that a potential home buyer can do to strengthen their loan application in such a competitive market that we're in right now? Is there some piece of advice that you're giving people to say, here, Let's make sure we include this on your loan app so that we can give you the best product available to help you aid you in your home purchase goals.
Yeah, I encourage full disclosure. So, what I mean by saying that is, if you're applying for a home loan, which the application process is super easy, that's something that I go over on those initial phone call discussions, but include all of your assets as an example. That's one that people leave off a lot is, I'm going to include my checking account, my savings account. My savings account has my down payment funds. This is good enough kind of thing. It's a little bit easier, maybe a little bit less paperwork. But, if you have a 401k or you have mutual funds and some different investments, that can strengthen your loan application and therefore strengthen your pre-approval. So I always encourage everybody, include everything, include all income that you have. We may or may not be able to use it to qualify, but at least I want to know about it. And if I can use it, I will. Income has to be documented. Assets have to be documented. So of course, anything that you disclose on your loan application, we're going to ask for documentation of. So I think 401k is just an easy one because I think people are like, I don't really know where my 401k statement is, which to be fair, I also don't know where my 401k statement is. I could find it though.
Either. We're not saying that you're pulling money out of it.
Yeah.
We just know that it's there as
Correct.
a resource just in case.
Yes. So I tell people, I'm like, include everything that you have because I want to give you credit for it. 401k, just like Greg said, if you are not using it to actually purchase the property, that's okay. If you're not pulling any money out of it, it's still counted towards what's called reserves. Reserves from a lender's standpoint is money that you have that you've done a good job saving that's not being tapped into for closing. And having reserves can really strengthen a file, especially if you don't have super high credit or if you're putting less money down. Adding reserves can definitely strengthen your file. So yeah, just be honest, be transparent with your lender, and that really helps in terms of qualifying. And then we don't have to ask so many questions, but a lot of times I'm like, do you have any other accounts or investments? And they're like, oh yeah, I have this 401k. I'm like, let's add that in, give me a statement for that.
Strengthen your application, make it look as good as it possibly can. Because you're winning a couple different things. You're winning the best loan product that you can qualify for. And then with your pre-approval letter, you're trying to win a deal with a home seller by beating out other buyers with the best offer that they think they want to accept.
Right.
So there's a lot of different pieces there. One of the other questions that come up is probably more focused at me than you, but we can both talk about this. In today's market, how quickly do you recommend moving on a property that you find and that I found and I like? What's the timeline to house hunting today? And I think I kind of answered that earlier in the podcast here today about some clients having to lose an offer or two before really taking my advice about going all in on a house they love. The generic look at a real estate transaction is typically between 5 and 7 weeks. So about a month and a half between when you found the house and got it under contract to when you close on the house, get keys, and can take possession. That's very generic. That's not how every transaction goes, but that's how the majority of transactions go when it comes to the real estate market in Northern Illinois, at least in Southern Wisconsin. So in today's market, how quickly do you move on a property that you find? We've been in a speed market for over 2 years, probably closer to 4 years. A speed market meaning houses that are priced right are often sold and pending and under contract in 48 hours or less. That's when you see statistics. There's a statistic called days on market, DOM, and the days on market in the Rockford area has been as low as like 20 days or 18 days. I think at one point, in January, it was down to like 18 days, but that is all properties sold in the previous month. Some of those properties were sitting on the market for months before they finally realized they needed to lower their price because they were asking too much.
Right.
Other properties were just very poor condition, and it took a long time to find a buyer willing to take on the poor condition of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, I would say, the majority of homes that hit the market. They're ready to be sold. They're ready to be lived in, and you can write an offer on them the day that they hit the market and close probably 5 or 6 weeks after that.
Yeah.
So how quickly do you move on a property that you like? Today.
Yeah. Immediately.
Today.
Immediately. And I think that goes back to planning though, right? Like, gosh, if there's one key to this market, it's planning. It's planning ahead, having your pre-approval in place, knowing what you can afford, knowing what program you're using, looking at houses with your realtor and just knowing all of that ahead of time. If you wait until you find that property, it is too late.
Yeah. It's there are other buyers who've been looking for 3, 6, 9 months already.
Yeah.
There are other buyers who have written 4, 8, 12 offers on houses and keep losing.
Right.
And now they're ready to go all in because they've finally learned their lesson of
Yeah.
what that means. So what are you going to do as the first house I got really lucky. I'll say lucky. I got fairly lucky here with one of my most recent clients who was a referral from a past client. So they knew I had worked with a family member, that I had helped them, and it took us a while, but we got the job done. We got them their house and we won them a deal. This particular client saw me as the consultant that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And when we found the house they loved, they went all in.
Mm-hmm.
They went all in, and they still lost the first house they wanted to buy, even though they went all in. Like I told them that they needed to win. We just came up a couple $1,000s short, literally like $2,000 short from somebody else's better offer. So that hurts. It stings. And about a week and a day later, we found another awesome house, and we got it this time.
So good.
2 houses, and that one we pretty much went all in again.
Yeah.
And so here we are under contracts, waiting for the appraisal to come back to see just where we are at with the sales price we agreed to with the seller and the appraisal value that the appraiser is going to give it here probably in the next week or two. Do those meet perfectly, or are we out of whack? I don't think we're out of whack, but we might be $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 off.
Yeah.
And where do we go from there?
I think too, it's important to kind of note though that does happen where you don't get the first house or the second house or the third house. And, I said the key to this market is planning, but it's also patience and just kind of understanding that it's okay. And it just means that there's another one that's even better or an even better location. But it's really being patient and understanding that without getting down or, feeling upset. And I understand that's a lot of buyers are feeling that way, so lean on the team that you choose to, again, make your offers more competitive. Sometimes as simple as putting down more earnest money. When you make an offer on a home, you give what's called earnest money. And that's basically, I say it's like good faith money. I'm not going to change my mind or walk away for whatever reason. And so sometimes giving additional funds is more skin in the game, and a seller, might appreciate that. So kind of getting strategic with your team on how to make the best offer, but also understanding that, this market is unique and, willing to be patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's land this plane by going to the headline, which is down payment assistance programs. By the way, if you're just tuning in, I'm Greg Saunders with Team Sold on Tony at Keller Williams Realty Signature. I'm a buyer specialist on the team there. And then Jess Rielly with ENVOY Mortgage, there we go, is a mortgage loan officer you can meet with face-to-face here locally if you need to, which is a big deal in my opinion. It's very important to be able to work with someone who you can meet with face-to-face and get your questions answered by someone who knows what in the world they're talking about. So are there any specific government programs or down payment assistance options available for buyers in this current market?
There are. I always tell people, if down payment is holding you back from purchasing a home, or even looking to see if you can purchase a home, do not let that hold you back. There is almost always down payment assistance available. Some of it is from a federal level, some of it is from a state level. Here in Illinois, we have what's called IHDA, IHDA, that stands for the Illinois Housing Development Authority. And IHDA is a kind of umbrella organization that puts out various down payment assistance and down payment programs. And as long as I've been in lending, there's always been an IHDA program. So I've been using IHDA for a long time. Currently, there's actually 3 different programs that are available for buyers. All of them are percentage based, meaning they're a percentage of your purchase price, not of your loan amount, but of your purchase price. And in many cases, the down payment assistance can help out with not only down payment, but also closing costs. So depending on the grant that you choose, and do you want me to go through the grants, Greg? I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a forgivable grant available. It offers 4% of the purchase price. That one is capped at $6,000. And it is 0% interest forgiven over 10 years. So you have to keep that property, keep that loan, live in the home for 10 years. If you sell or move out or refinance, let's say in year 5 or anything less than 10, really, you would owe the prorated amount back to IHDA. So meaning, if you got $6,000 at closing and you had that home for 5 years instead of 10, you would owe $3,000 back to IHDA. You'd have to pay half of it back. Again, it's nice because it's 0% interest. So you're never paying back over and above what was given to you. But the longer you stay there, the more that's forgiven. So that's a forgivable. The second one offers a little bit more. It offers 5% of your purchase price. And this one is with a deferred payment. So what that means is it is repayable in full. It's 0% interest at the end of that loan term, or if you move out of the property. So let's say I bought it as my first house. I now made it into a rental property. When I move out, I would have to pay back the grant that I received at closing. For most people, I have to imagine it's going to be when they sell their property or when they refinance their home loan. That lien or that grant does get attached to their home as a lien. So we'll know about it. It's not something you can hide. But that 5% grant is available up to $7,500. So with $7,500 for a lot of people, that can cover their full down payment. And for some people, cover their down payment and their closing costs. Then the third grant that's available is a 10% grant. So 10% of the purchase price up to $10,000. So there's a $10,000 cap on that. That is repayable monthly at 0%. So again, 0% interest, which is nice, over 10 years. So if you receive the full $10,000, it ends up adding about $83 to your monthly payment, which we factor in, of course, at time of closing when we're talking about what your payment would be. So all of that being said, not that anybody, would expect to remember all of that, but just know that there's down payment programs out there to help you with not just down payment, but also your closing costs.
Yeah, there, and that's just it. It's which one fits your current financial situation the best.
Right.
That's what you want to talk to a loan officer like Jessica all about. And I guess as a way to land the plane for my side of things, and I think you'll agree, if people are waiting for rates to go down before buying their next house, should rates go down in any substance, the number of home buyers that are going to come out of the woodwork is going to shoot up home prices. Home prices will only increase if interest rates drop significantly. So what do you really want to do? Do you want to be a homeowner? Or do you want to play the game of the interest rates game, which is just not it's not a game to play. It's just,
Yeah.
it's like trying to.
I bought a house. I bought a house last year, and this is what I tell people. I'm like, I love real estate. I believe in investing in real estate, both the roof over my head and as, you know, a landlord. And I bought a house last year when interest rates were not good. They had just gone up pretty significantly. And you know, I'm still comfortable with my payment. Again, I look at payment very closely, and you know, I'm comfortable with my payment. I know where I'm at in terms of rent, and when they do come down, I will refinance. But you know, I'm not betting on doing that this year and maybe even next year. But at some point I will, and that'll be great. That'll just be additional savings to me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, can you think of anything that we didn't touch on that we want to before we wrap things up? I think we covered all
I
the
did. I did. You know what? I'm glad you said that. I have one thing to say. Pre-approvals. We've been talking about planning and starting early. Pre-approvals are good for 4 months, and I forgot to mention that. And I think that that's important because even if you're not planning, like let's say today, you know, it's April, you want to buy closer to the end of summer. Start talking to us now. If you are pre-approved and everything looks good, that will get you all the way through the next 4 months. So it's important to know that.
There you go. There you go. Good advice. And if you have any further questions for us, feel free to drop them in the comments here. We should be able to see them, and we're glad to help. Click on the links too. They're in the comments as well, so you can go right to our websites, and we'd be glad to catch up with you in person. All right.
Cool. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for your time, Jess. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.